stay tuned. Keep watching Mid-Morning Show.
Yeah,
When you keep watching the main money show,
you have no
God
choice.
will bless you.
All right, it's another beautiful Wednesday edition of the Mid-Morning Show, the first Wednesday edition, the mid-morning edition of the month for the month of June. You're welcome to another episode. My name is Tolakbo Olaomi, and you know, like we always say, we never walk solo.
We or you. Anyway, good morning. You're welcome to Mid Morning Show. It's a pleasure to be here again this morning. And all thanks be to God for keeping us alive. This is the last month for the first half of the year 2026. There is this bad news that time flies, but there is this good news that you are the pilot of your time. So yes, you need to pilot your time correctly to make it a productive one for you. My name is Pelumi Asende, and yes, you're welcome. As you all know, our Wednesday's episode, we have a personality of the week. So she's going to join us, but before then, let's take this feature on depression. We'll be right back.
Depression is a deep psychological wound, more painful than anything that bleeds. It is the feeling of sadness, worthlessness, and hopelessness, marked with high concentration on problems and mistakes made. According to the World Health Organization, depression is a mental disorder that affects over 264 million people of all ages in the world. Depression is very different from sadness or mood swings in that the latter are temporal responses to life's challenges. Depression is more intense and lasts longer and can worsen or be the cause of serious health issues like asthma, cardiovascular diseases, cancer, diabetes, and obesity, and can even lead to suicide. Depression affects 1 in 15 adults every year, and it is certain that everyone will experience depression at some point in their life. On the average, depression may first happen during the late teens to the mid-20s of a person's life. Studies have shown that women are more likely to experience depression than men. Depression is a mental illness. It can cause the affected person to function badly and poorly at work, in school, in the family, and in the society generally. About 800,000 people commit suicide every year as a result of depression. Suicide is the second leading cause of death in 15 to 29-year-olds. As a state of withdrawal from usual activities, depression is a state of intense sadness and grief. The symptoms of depression include change of appetite, which could lead to weight loss or heavy weight gain, loss of interest in one's enjoyed activities, insomnia or oversleeping, crying on regular basis, loss of energy, engaging in high-risk activities, being deep in or lost in thought, quick anger, aggressiveness, and irritability, suicidal thoughts, feeling of guilt, and avoiding loved ones or people. All these symptoms last for at least 2 weeks to form a diagnosis of depression. There are several factors that can lead to depression. Some of these are low self-esteem. People with low self-esteem or people who are naturally pessimistic are more likely to fall into depression. Hormonal imbalance. Hormones change as a result of pregnancy and during weeks or months of delivery, postpartum, menopause, and a number of conditions. Abuse. Abuse is one of the things that can cause depression. Physical abuse, sexual abuse like rape, genital mutilation, and emotional abuse like insults, etc., can make a person vulnerable to depression. Bereavement. Death or loss of loved ones can cause sadness or grief, which can eventually lead to depression. Genetics. A person with a family history of depression has a very high risk of becoming depressed at some point in life. Other causes of depression are sickness, change in lifestyle, disappointment, and anxiety. There are two broad types of depression: the major depressive disorder and the persistent depressive disorder. The major depressive disorder, also known as MDD, is a severe form of depression characterized by persistent feelings of sadness, worthlessness, and hopelessness. The major depressive disorder is discovered when a person experiences at least 5 or more of the symptoms over a period of 2 weeks. On the other hand, persistent depressive disorder, also known as dysthymia, is a milder but continuous long-term form of depression and leads to depression. Some of these are low self-esteem. People with low self-esteem or people who are naturally pessimistic are more likely to fall into depression. Hormonal imbalance. Hormones change as a result of pregnancy and during weeks or months of delivery, postpartum, menopause, and a number of conditions. Abuse. Abuse is one of the things that can cause depression. Physical abuse, sexual abuse like rape, genital mutilation, and emotional abuse like insults, etc., can make a person vulnerable to depression. Bereavement. Death or loss of loved ones can cause sadness or grief, which can eventually lead to depression. Genetics. A person with a family history of depression has a very high risk of becoming depressed at some point in life. Other causes of depression are sickness, change in lifestyle, disappointment, and anxiety. There are two broad types of depression: the major depressive disorder and the persistent depressive disorder. The major depressive disorder, also known as MDD, is a severe form of depression characterized by persistent feelings of sadness, worthlessness, and hopelessness. The major depressive disorder is discovered when a person experiences at least 5 or more of the symptoms over a period of 2 weeks. On the other hand, persistent depressive disorder, also known as dysthymia, is a milder but continuous long-term form of depression and lasts for years. It is not as intense as major depression, but it also strains relationships and can make daily tasks difficult. Depression can be very difficult to live with, but treatments can help improve the condition. Healthcare providers combine one or more treatments or lifestyle therapies to help people living with depression. These treatments are, but not limited to, counseling, medications, and lifestyle changes.
Still Made Morning Show, and we just add that feature on depression. So yes, you know, our guest is a clinical psychologist. She is a life coach. She's a girl, a women advocate. She's also a trainer. And we have Mrs. Motolani Akintayo with us today. Good morning, Ma.
Good morning.
It's a pleasure having you on Mid-Morning Show.
Good morning.
Yes, like I said, she's a clinical psychologist and a mental health expert with a client reach covering the United States, the United Kingdom, and African countries. She's also a professional life coach with the Chartered Institute of Coaching and Mentoring Nigeria, and a United Nations 1000 Peace Ambassador for the Girl Women Speak advocacy. And, you know, it's a pleasure having you here.
Thank you.
I must say that she's one woman that, you know, you'd admire. You'd be like, she's very eloquent, she's smart, you know. Thumbs up to you.
Thank you. Thank you for the compliment.
Yes, you're welcome. So yes, our Wednesday episode is for the personality of the week. So you are a personality of the week. I would say June, because, you know, this is the first episode in the month of June. So we're going to take a trip down memory lane. Your growing up experiences. Where did you grow up, and how was the experience?
Okay, thank you so very much. I grew up in Lagos, Alagbado, Lagos precisely. I grew up in an environment where I found love from father, mother, and the environment. However, I believe rather that one of the things that shaped my growth over the years is my exposure to books from the time get-go. I can remember that as early as 13 years of age, I was already reading books like Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki.
Wow.
I was already reading books like 13.
Wow, 13, wow.
By Steve Farrar, Finishing Strong.
Wow.
I was already reading books by Joyce Meyers, a number of them. So I was a lover of books. So it was not uncommon that even at a young age, when there is a knock on the door, everybody in the house is like, they're looking for Mutolani.
Wow.
And then when the person comes in, the person is actually asking for Mutolani. And then they seem to be asking questions about life. I mean, my friends, much of them were usually older than I am, very much older than I am, right? And then when they ask questions, somehow I tend to have the answers to many of the questions. So I would say that's, in summary, let me stop like that at that, then you pick up your question from there.
Okay, yes. Growing up in Lagos, you know the hustling and bustling of Lagos and the fact that you have to be street smart. So how did you cope in those years of growing up in Lagos?
Okay, thank you so very much. If anybody had told me that I would ever, at any point, stay a good part of my life in another place outside Lagos State, I would have debated it full time. Because, I mean, Lagos, births, primary school, secondary school, church, everything is in Lagos. And somehow there's always that Lagos pride.
Exactly. You wear it like shoulder pads.
There's always that Lagos pride. Like, I'm a Lagos person, and then I can't be dull. Right, so I would say that Lagos actually shaped my life a lot. I remember that, again, the church structure also shaped me a whole lot, because early years, things that Lagos did for me was confidence. There's even on the job, I have colleagues who say, Mutolan, there's practically nobody you can't talk to. And that's the truth, no matter the heights. I want to thank God for that confidence, because, I mean, Lagos is a land, or is a no man's land. So you meet the black, the blue, the yellow, and the red. And then when you're able to meet, those kind of people, I think you can be anywhere in the world and then maintain your confidence.
Okay, so how would you say your childhood was like, growing up with your siblings, and how many siblings did you get to grow up with?
Okay, thank you. So I had, and I still have, 3 siblings. So we are 4. The third of 4 children.
Wow, yeah, like the semi-last born.
Yeah, second to the last, right? So our firstborn, Tolulokpe Alishe, my maiden name is Alishe. My elder brother, who is now a medical doctor. My elder sister, who is now an educationist, Okpeyemi Alishe. And then I have my younger sister, who is a banker, Ibukunluwa Alishe. Growing up with them was actually amazing. And the truth is, I think we lived very close-knitted. And then we didn't tend to see that there is a world outside our world until I moved out of Lagos, and then I moved into Oyo State. And then I discovered that it's a different ball game for many people outside there. Not you call the mommy, you get the answer. You call the daddy, you get the answer. Yeah. Not everybody tends to have that, So for me, growing up was actually very wonderful with my siblings.
Okay, Mrs. Akintayo, we're going to take a break now. So when we are back, we'll unwrap that Lagos life very well. Stay with us. It's still the Mid-Morning Show.
Cadbury 3-in-1 hot chocolate, the treat you deserve.
Welcome back. It's still the mid-morning show. You know, the Wednesday episode where we have a personality of the week, Mrs. Motolani Akintayo, clinical psychologist, a life coach, a girl women advocate, and as well a trainer. So, ma'am, before all of this, yes, you know, the growing up experiences in your primary school, you know, how was it? Because was it a boarding school or was it, you know, like a day school? How did you relate with your peers, your intellectual ability? You know, we know that you started reading very early. So was it affecting your education, or you know, you were topping the chart?
Okay, so thank you very much. I remember that I was the senior girl.
Oh.
So I think, again, I was exposed to leadership at a very young age also. I was the senior girl, and I guess I was topping my class too. So reading the books didn't actually distract me in any sense. And I don't know, for some reason, even though I came from maybe not excessively too rich, but we were very okay, right? Considering that my mom is from the medical background and all that. I seem to like money. I don't know how that happened, because I know that even in primary school, I would bring some little salt. I don't know, then there's something we used to call Eriko Shudi. I don't know if anybody can remember. It's like the recent day chocolates, the other chocolate, I can't remember now. Chocolate Cadbury or something. Okay. Yeah, beverage, yeah, something like that. And I would take it to school, I would sell and then make money. And then fast forward into secondary school also. I think in my GSS also, I changed school, of course, because my primary school didn't have a secondary school, but was still in the vicinity, right? Yes. And then I was also still topping the class. However, it was a larger class because I met a number of other students from other schools and all of that. But then, so I had to compete and then just run that my brain is still as intact as possible. However, one thing I can remember from both my primary school and my secondary school was the fact that my classmates were always calling me small rats.
Oh.
Hey. And why
so
is that?
as much as I was still topping the class, I had a very small stature. I don't know if I still have that anyway.
You still do. You still do.
So I had a very small stature, and then I remember then my mom would say that whenever she's taking me out, she'll have to buy me big clothes so that it will look to people like I'm big and, and I'm not slim and all that. But of course, GSS 3, it was science-oriented for me, funny enough, in GSS 3. I think one of the challenges I had in the latter part of my secondary school was the choice of career.
Okay.
It was a top-notch one for me, and that's why I think that's influenced many of my passion for the young people nowadays, because I was a lover of books, I was a lover of development in life, had so many talents.
So
I could sing.
You were at a crossroad.
I could sing, I could act, I could do so many things, but I couldn't find exactly what I wanted to do with my life. And somehow in GSS, everybody seemed to know where they were going to, you know, and then coming from a science-driven background, my parents wanted me to be a medical doctor.
Wow.
But I had seen it all. I had seen, my mom had 2 clinics in Lagos. I've seen when the women are having cervical tear while maybe during delivery process. I'd seen injections. So I was so tired of that life. I just wanted something different, you know. So somehow that way I disappointed them, because they wanted me to, you know, to be a medical doctor. So I said no, I was going to be a chartered accountant, because somehow I seem to just like the way they dressed.
Okay, at what point did you discover yourself to say that, okay, I want to be a chartered accountant?
Now, to tell you the truth, it wasn't like I was sure I wanted to be a chartered accountant. One, I just wanted to tell them something so that they would let me rest. Two, I seem to watch maybe news and then see the way they dress with their suits, the ladies, and I felt, okay, this thing looks like something good. Meanwhile, don't forget the fact that I had started reading early enough. Yeah. I knew I wanted to solve problems when it comes to life issues, unhappiness, sadness, anxiety, human problems. I knew I wanted to solve those things, but there was no clear-cut counseling to help me say, oh, it is psychology that will help you arrive at this. It is human something that will help you arrive at this. So I was just moving from one point, but to save all of the time, you know, so
we have the time.
So my dad, consoled himself rather that, okay, you will do ICANN if you're going for accounting and all that. Then somewhere along the line, my English teacher discovered that I'm very good with English and all of that. And he said, come and become the press president.
Okay.
So I would cast the notes on the assembly, and it's like, wow, this is a real asset. And again, I began to like media,
Okay.
yes, and all that. So again, I was at a crossroad between accounting, but I couldn't get home and tell my parents that I'm moving from accounting again to it was a tough thing for my brain, I must tell you. I remember there were times I cried when I was alone, you know, and that's why, to a large extent, young people, the things that we think are just trivial are not actually trivial to some of them.
Actually.
They're having it's really, really tough. Okay, so at the end of the day, I did something very, very funny. So my SS2, I did accounting. You know, there's always this GCE you do in SS2.
Yeah.
So I did accounting. Again, I was the best student in accounting.
Wow.
You know, and then I was also topping when it comes to my English and all that. So when I was writing my WAEC, without telling my parents, I moved to art class.
Wow.
Yes, I did.
Wow.
Without telling them. And then when the result was about coming out, my dad was like, Tolani's account should just come out, and then she has A1. And then behold, my elder sister was the only one aware. And then she told daddy that Tolani did not register for account. It was a bombshell.
You even able to navigate?
It was a bombshell. I won't deny that. It was a bombshell. You know, my dad was disappointed. Everything we want you to do in life, you are not doing. But there was something inside of me crying for purpose. There was something inside of me crying for to be an answer to people's problem. I just didn't find exactly what it was. Along the line, I applied. I knew I always wanted the best in life. So I told them that, which is the best university in Nigeria? And I heard University of Ibadan. I said, now she's squeezing her nose.
No.
And then again, you want me to thank you? You greatest you. That's on a lighter note. And then I heard that it was actually the hardest also to get into. And I said, that hard one, go. That's the one I want to go.
You don't even mention about university, OAU.
Funny enough, you know, I had all my life in Lagos. My parents did not even want me to come to Ibadan because for them, they don't even have a family here. So all they wanted me to do is just rigmarole around Lagos and all that. And I said, no, I'm going to Ibadan. My mom said, I don't have anybody there. I said, I am going. Again, I think I've always been very independent from a young age, right? Always fronting things. And even at the church, I was always leading the teenage group, you know, and all that. So that gave me a sense of knowledge, self-awareness. Again, I read books, you know, so I was self-aware. Team like, hi, why you act the way you do, you know, those things really, really exposed me. And I could have said that maybe counseling would have been a thing for me. But again, as at that time, the question was always, will your passion put money on your table? I remember one of my siblings constantly asking me, Tolani, you can do so many things, but what will give you money? You know, and it was an important question. So I came in UI, I was told that the only subject that will accept my combination is philosophy. Well, since I did not have a choice of career in the first place, please let me dive into it. And then when I looked at philosophy, it spoke about the study of the universe, study of the environment. So I felt, okay, I'm interested about this whole life, right? So let me put in for it. And for me, I put my best into whatever my hands find doing. And again, I had to navigate my way all through my time in Ibadan, my 4 years in Ibadan, because I didn't have any family here. But thanks be to God, philosophy passed through me, and I passed through philosophy. I came out as one of the best 10 graduating students in philosophy. And then I went back to Lagos, because I mean, Lagos has always been
in your bloodstream.
So I asked a question from few of more senior friends who I felt were doing well in the labor market. So what is that thing I can do that I can impact the environment and I can still make money? And then one of them said human resources. I said, oh, okay, good. So I went to Lagos. And so you can see the trajectory from loving humanity and then trying to find an answer to. So when I got into HR, you know, I started interning, volunteering, and then I found my footing again. It was interesting, but somewhere along the line, I was only interested in the training part, where I had to impact. Sometimes I find some of the employees coming to confide in me about some of their struggles, and at the end of the day, because HR had to do with entry, recruitment to exit, I find myself hiring some of my friends.
Wow.
That was my breaking point, because I mean, I wanted to, it's nothing wrong to fire, but then it wasn't meeting up with my personality. So I could talk to you now, and then, of course, because I had to protect the company, I wouldn't be able to tell you that I want to fire you. The next time you see my email, that you are exiting the firm. Do you understand? So I knew it wasn't driving so well with my personality. So fast forward, I'm a lover of God. So the only thing that felt like it was answering my question was the church part. Because in church, I could help. I'd helped teenagers who are having problem with masturbation. I remember one of my mentees reached out to me. She's now married. And she said, Ma, when I was young, I had issues with pornography. I spoke with you, and then you gave me what to do. She said, when I got into the university, I had a lot of people that had issues with pornography. It was the same thing you told me that helped me, that I kept telling them, and they were offering. I almost told her, tell me what I told you, so that I can put it in a book and help others. So, you know, the church was helping me to help people in relationship, people, you know, I remember having a case of a lady who had aborted for a particular guy 7 times. I couldn't tell anybody. And then, so that was...
She could open up
to me. So that church was my answer. I felt, okay, I think ministry is what I'm cut out for, you know. And then I came back to Ibadan, worked with a ministry in place. And then while doing it, I was finding answers. So in one of those days, I just said, okay, ministry, then, of course, because I am very organizational and structured. Okay, so let me put a caveat to ministry. I just don't want to do it the way everybody is doing it. You know, I want to put a structure. I want to put knowledge to it. And then I went to UI to make inquiries about organizational management. Don't forget organizational psychology. Don't forget I had HR background. Yeah, so I felt, okay, so that would help me put structure to whatever ministry I will be running, maybe to help women, to help ladies, to help teenagers. Lo and behold, I got there, and while they were talking to me, they mentioned clinical psychology, and I'm like, what's clinical psychology? And then by the time I was giving the breakdown, I'm like, this is what I have been doing since I was young. Clinical psychology, where have you been? You know, but then I met a strong it. And what was the it? I didn't have a foundation in psychology, you know, and so it was a tough game for me. And they're like, the only reason they can take me is if I have a first degree in psychology. But considering the fact that I'm one of the best students from psychology, from philosophy. Okay, let's give you a trial. So I was asked to sit. UI is not a joking school, I'm sure we all know, and they are very prim and proper on navigating very top-notch things. So I was made to write the use of English. If you come out very well in the use of English, we would consider you. So I wrote my use of English, and then I skyrocketed with the score, and they're like, even at that, we are not allowing you still. You are going to sit with undergraduates who had 4-year course in psychology. And then if you are able to score well, you will definitely come in again to do clinical psychology. And I'm like, interesting. So you know what I did? Because I've always been a bookworm, I went back, took all the tutorials I needed to take for psychology. It was a hard one, I must tell you. You know, taking 100 levels, and as God will have it, I read like I was not going to pray, and I prayed like I was not going to read. My name came out number 3 on the merit list. But that was not the end of the story.
I think we'll come back to that story.
All right, thank you.
We need to take this commercial. We'll be right back.
The home is under attack, but not for long, because Hypo is here. Dirty floors and surfaces.
Not on our watch.
Every day with Hypo. Dirty and stains don't be do shakara. We got the remedy, original palasa. Hypo, go Hypo.
Germs always find a way back.
No green. Protect every day with Hypo.
Hypo, go Hypo.
Okay, you're welcome back. It's still the mid-morning show, and we still have a guest with us, the personality of the week. So, ma'am, you said there is a backstory.
Okay, so yeah, so when I came into psychology, clinical psychology, because again, clinical psychology is a pathway. You don't just come into it. I think one of the graces I enjoyed is because psychology is also an offshoot of philosophy. However, you can't still compare it because, I mean, there are a lot of things that you would have learned on your first degree. So when I came in, the university made me go through 100 level, 200 level, 300 level, 400 level, while also still having my master's. I almost broke.
Wow.
And then, but again, because I'm whatever I set my heart to do, I give my best to it. And then because it has been a passion from the get-go, you know, I've seen a lot of talents, a lot of individuals who have lost themselves, you know, because of mental health issues, because of emotional issues, because of depression, anxiety, relationship, you know, and so many things. So I was really passionate, you know, to help. And as God will have it again, I finished with a distinction.
How did your parents feel? You know, navigating through philosophy, HR, clinical psychology, when they wanted you to be a medical doctor. At that particular point, how did they feel? Did they feel like, oh, or they felt like, okay, let me support you in whatever you were doing at that particular point?
Okay, so I think my parents were quite liberal.
Okay.
My dad was actually disappointed. And I remember him saying that, I'll say it in Yoruba and then I'll translate it in English. Meaning that everything I want you to do in this life, you did not end up doing them. But however, they are not such parents that if you are not eating to them, then they push you out of the house, they disown you and all that. So they still gave their support, even in the face of that. Yeah. So let me go back to my story.
Exactly.
So, and then of course, by the time I finished my master's with my undergraduate, I made friends from 100 level, friends from 200 level, friends from 300 level, friends from 400 level, so that I could cover many of the curriculum. And at the end of the day, I finished with a PhD graded distinction from University of Ibadan. But that still was not enough.
Okay, before we continue, you
Yes.
know, looking at all this transitioning, weren't you discouraged at a point, like, I'm tired, let me pull out of this thing, like, let me just focus on one. Like you said, you have so many things you're good at. Let me just focus on the one that will fetch me money. You know, what kept you going on, and weren't you discouraged at any point?
Okay, so, and I think that's where purpose comes in. Very early in my life, while I was doing all those reading, I became very self-aware and understood what I wanted, even though it looked like the system I was living in was not giving me a name to what I was doing. So I knew that I was going to be speaking to lives. I knew that I was going to be impacting the environment. I knew I was going to be changing, you know, narratives in the environment. So that purpose was a guiding part for whatever I was doing. So if you look at everything I did, even philosophy had to do with humanity.
Yeah.
If you look at psychology, it had to do with humanity. If you look at human resources, it had to do with humanity. So they still did not, even as a clinical psychologist now, I find all of those experiences as a philosopher, as a human resource person, I find those experiences very handy in all that I do today. So after all, at the end of the day, even ministry, you will say that I still had to do with women. So I was not leaving the sphere of impact and solution.
So, but you said, you know, UI was very tough, you know, the fact that you had to go back to reading and all. Like, weren't you discouraged, you know? Like, maybe we are human, you know, maybe an altar of, I'm tired. Like, it keeps demanding your time, your energy, your resources. Weren't you tired at all?
Okay, so what if I tell you that I had to go back to do psychology first degree again?
Wow.
So, even after all of that, because like it's a pathway, like I said, for you to be a practicing clinical psychology, you have to have your first degree in psychology. So irrespective of the fact that I've had philosophy, you know, I still had to go back to do a first degree in psychology. So that question is actually good to ask, that were you not tired? Well, maybe I was, but maybe I didn't feel it because the motivation of the future was stronger than the pain of the present for me.
So you were not considering maybe your age, you were not considering, you know, some limiting factors. You did not consider all those.
I did not. Like I said, the burning, you know, passion is like a fire in your heart. Passion is like an undying flame. You know, somebody was listening to me over the radio. She was driving, her husband was with her. And then I was being interviewed on a program by one of the top-notch women in the city. And then immediately she heard my voice. She increased the volume. And then she told her husband, that's the Motolani Akita I've been telling you about. And the husband said, okay, let me listen. And then as I was talking, the husband said, she's so passionate. I said, that is how she is. Oh, that is everything she does. She puts her heart into it. I am a staunch believer in the fact that we are not going to be on earth forever. I'm a staunch believer in the fact that our time here on earth is limited. I don't have the time to do all that I need to do. But within the sphere of time that I have been given on earth by God, I want to fulfill my part. I want to make my impact. I usually say this to people. 60 is the age of our active life. By 60, we are all saying, I'm getting calm and all. Minus your current age from 60. You know, how many is left? If you're in your 30s, we are saying like 20-something. If you're in your 40s, we are saying like 18 or something. So that means you have 18 years to really do what you need to do before you start saying you want to put your hands down. So really there is no time. So I'm somebody, I tell people I'm a man on a date. When you talk about having a mandate. So I am very, so I wasn't really conscious of what the time was saying. I just wanted to hit the mark. And then again, because what I was dealing with is human lives. I do not believe in mediocrity. I do not believe in average. I do not believe in having a sub-knowledge because I'm dealing with human life. So even with psychology as a first degree, I still have continuous education, taking courses, taking certification. And I tell you, the largest room that will never get filled in life is the room for improvement. You know, till we die, we should still be learning. Because the moment you stop learning, you start what? Sinking. You know, and if you want to remain relevant in the environment, because knowledge is a continuous evolvement. So you need to currently keep yourself abreast of knowledge so that you can give the best to your environment. So I think that mentality was a driving force for me. Because I remember that when we came into UI for our clinical psychology, I had some other colleagues also that had the same challenge, and they were like, I can't do this. And I told them, we will do this. This is a Goliath, but we will not turn back seeing Goliath. You know, this is it's a challenge actually, but it's an opportunity for us to stand tall. You know, so David, permit me to say this because I'm a strong believer in God. David saw a challenge. If he had turned his back on Goliath, he would have missed the opportunity for kingship. But when he saw Goliath, and he didn't just see it as a challenge, he saw it as a responsibility that was going to lift him. By the time he fronted that challenge, then kingship came. So many times, challenge is not actually the issue, but our response and our disposition. So I told I created a WhatsApp group. All of us, we are coming. Nobody's backing out. We have entered the city and we are going to come out strong. That's a very brilliant question. So because I had different seasons in my life, I wouldn't say that I had one mentor. So at different seasons, while in the church, I'm sure there was somebody who was guiding. While I was in secondary school, there was somebody I looked up to. While I was in HR, of course, I had a boss that I was looking up to. When I came into clinical psychology, I still have somebody I'm looking up to. So I would say I'm a combination of impacts and drops of impacts from people, including the books that I read. Rick Warren, I had a very quick exposure to Rick Warren, the man who wrote Purpose Driven Life, you know, very early in life. So except you did not read the book and the book did not enter you.
Because some people get to read the book later in life.
Did you get? So I read that book very early in life, and then one of the lines that caught me then, it says that until you assume that there is a God, life makes no sense. And then I remember that in one of my philosophy classes too, one of my lecturers said that until you assume whether there is a God or not, the question of life becomes meaningless. So I've met a lot of atheists in my life, and then you discover that the way an atheist and the way a person who believes in God, whether you're a Muslim or a Christian, the way they act differs because of the assumption of whether there is a God, yes, or not.
Beautiful.
Okay, so your interest in reading, right? You know, you started very early. Was it that you saw your mom doing that, or was it your siblings? Or because, you know, children then, like being a child, you just want to like maybe explore. But sometimes you might just want to feel like, I can see that mommy likes reading. Maybe that was what spurred your interest. Where exactly would you say, spurred your interest to go
Okay,
into
so I
reading?
think one of the things that spurred my interest for reading was that I had questions about life that nobody seemed to be answering. Yes, I had many questions about life. For example, when I was moving to my SS1, I joined a new school, and then I noticed that everybody was picking themselves tutu. What do I mean by that? We were having boyfriend and girlfriend. And I didn't understand the narrative that was happening, because the junior school I was coming from, we were all book. But here was I in a new school where everybody was picking themselves tutu. And at some point, I started having crush too. So I didn't want to be in a relationship, but I couldn't deny the fact that I was having emotions. So I had questions, So those were some of the things that beckoned my heart to start looking for answers. Again, sometimes I wake up in the morning and I'm like, is this all there is to life? We wake up, we sleep, we eat, we go out, we wake up. So I had question, what is this whole life all about? Then I can't deny the fact, like I said earlier, that the church structure is something that also helped me. And this is why I would say to many of our religious circle, that the children department is not something to take with levity at all, because it's a formative part. I remember that in children church, we were always given books. So I can say that was we were giving books to go and memorize, even though we didn't understand what we were memorizing. We were giving books to go and memorize, to go and read, and then you come and pour down. And then when you win, there's a reward system, all of those things. I remember that even when I got into UI and I was studying philosophy, of course, because philosophy will come and some parts, except for Christian philosophers, that will tell you that there is no God.
Yes.
There was a battle between what I was hearing in class and what I had grown up with. That was where that scripture became light to me, that train up your child in the way he should go. When he grows up, he will not depart from it. My parents was not there to help me defend my faith. It was me and the society. So when you train up your child, you get to a point at that teenage age when you do not have total control over what they do and what they are exposed to, even in school. But what you have formed inside them becomes a guiding light, by the time they become exposed to the environment. So I will say again, that one of the things that pushed and helped my reading, culture, was the church. Again, we always had this teenage group in church. By the time I grew a little out of children department, and that's why I really appreciate this church called Foursquare Gospel Church. I grew up from Foursquare Gospel Church in Nigeria. They have segments for each of those age levels. So in teenage age, we were exposed to topics about sex. It's a topic that maybe as at those years when I grew up, some churches don't even want to discuss it with their teenagers. But imagine at that time, I had the opportunity in camp meetings where you have people come up and then talk about sex. So the emotions that we are so worrying about, that, hey, I want to have a boyfriend. We had people who could tell us, this is how it is, this is what sex is all about. It's something that you do, and you get tired of.
Exactly, because I can also recall, when I was a teenager as well, we went for one of these camp meetings, and then there was this video, they do film shows then. So there's this film show about abortion. And then, it was not fear that was planted in us, but that awareness of this is how it
Exactly.
goes. So at least a child will be able to say, oh my God, I don't want to do this.
Exactly.
So I think the formative years, like you mentioned, like when the foundation is destroyed, that is it. But we really need to, like parents also, they really need to know that they should allow their children, to be planted
in the right place,
so that it will help
where
them
they can
grow.
be exposed to the right information.
That's very nice.
Let's go on a short break.
Yes, we take this break. We'll be back. Stay with us. much a girl and women advocate. She's also a trainer. So, ma'am, I love the fact that, you were quite exposed at the early years, and, it's shaped the kind of person you are now. So, life challenges will come. Definitely, life's ups and downs and the likes. So what is that one challenging moment of your life that you cannot forget? When you look back, you're like, this season, this particular period broke me, but I refuse to stay on the ground. And you picked yourself up. So let's
wow, many challenging experiences that I had. A lot. And as you're asking the question, I'm asking myself, which of them do I want to share? But I think one of the challenging times for me had to be with I don't want to say proving to my parents that at the end of the day, I'm not a misfit.
Forged your own path.
Yes, because I remember my brother traveled into the city one of those days when I was making one of these lifetime decisions. And then he said, Mutolani, I had to just travel down to be sure you are okay. He bought me this yogurt, bought me a plate of porridge. I said, eat first, because I just need to be sure that you are fine. And then after eating, and then he asked me questions, and then he saw my audacity and my assurance about what I was about to do. He said, Mutolani, there are decisions that you have taken that even me as a man, I have not taken the bold step towards them. He said, however, listening to you, I'm very sure and certain that you know what you are doing and why you are taking the step. So I was actually taking several decisions, fronting a path that nobody, I would say, maybe around me, had practically taken that path before. So I would say that there were times I had to be on my own, self-reflection, taking steps on my own, taking decisions, It was a tough one. It was a tough one because I was the only one that was seeing what I was seeing, But I'm glad that today it's a different ball game. They've seen my face on billboard, they've seen me on TV, they've heard me on radio, and then the results are showing that actually she actually knows her onion and she knew what she was doing.
So going back to your parents now, the fact that you, like you said, you've been able to not prove that you're not a misfit, their reactions after all these years, the fact that they say, don't you see me? How was your reaction? How is your reaction?
I remember my mom called in one day and she said that, I'll say it to Yoruba again and I'll say it in English. Okay. She said, Mutolani, mokwe, but otutu reko. Meaning that I taught you, but you also retrained yourself. She said there are things that you are doing that even me as your mom, I'm like, wow, I couldn't have done it better. So that expression is one in a million, for me. My dad doesn't joke with me. He celebrates me, he likes me, right? He's proud of me. And he said, Mutolani, I've always known.
Fathers,
I've always known. Then I remember I'm telling you. And then I remember my brother too. There was a particular time he saw one of my exploits and he sent me a message. And then he said, I've always known that you would be a great girl. I just did not know what you were going to do to be great. But I just knew you were going to be great. So the feedback has actually been very massive. Also from my younger sister, because I practically started mentoring her from when I was young.
Wow.
I'm 5 years older than her. For some reason, maybe again the books I was reading, I told myself, if I can raise this girl to be somebody of substance, then I would do well in raising my own children. So I used that as a training platform, for raising. And today when I look at the woman that she has become, I'm always very, very proud. She's still my mentee. Wow. And she calls me mommy anyway.
Thank God for last born.
Thank God for last born.
Yes. All right, we need to take this break. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Okay, you're welcome back. You know, that quote says that the purpose of life is to live a life that, you know, you've lived really well. Now, I'm just making a summary. Yeah, the purpose of life is not to be happy. It is to be useful, to be honorable, to be compassionate, to have it make some difference that you have lived and lived well. So, yes, I would say that quote, you know, goes well with our guest today, Mrs. Motolani Akintayo. So, we're going to take a detour now because of our time. Marriage life, you know.
Before we go into marriage,
okay.
How about we talk about our service here?
No. So if I was going to get married, then I was telling myself that then I have to be happier. If I'm not going to be happier in marriage, then I'd rather stay single. I'm not one of those that believes in the contemporary arrangement, school after school, job after job, marriage. I hate anything statutory. So I had to ask myself, am I a candidate for marriage? Do I actually want to get married? Is marriage for me? Then I realized I'm actually a very emotional person and I actually would love to get married. So, of course, in, what's it called? My service here, I did not meet my husband there.
Oh, okay.
Funny enough, I met my husband right in Oyo State.
I'm sure Oyo indigenous
not in
Lagos.
You know.
Oh, look at that. This is gonna
Yeah, so.
Which
Ogun State.
Oh, you said in Ogun State.
Yes.
Wow. Platinum what?
Yeah, Plateau 6.
Wow.
That's great. I never even thought I can remember the
Wow.
platoon. Yeah, so Plateau 6. And I met my husband when I had a number of men around me. And I would say that many of the men I had around me, permit me, as much as I love and I respect them, were yes men. And what do I mean by yes men? They were people always telling me positive things about me. No doubt, we all love to get positive things, but I can't be perfect, right? I wanted somebody that can lead me, you know, yes, that can see certain defects and say, Motolani, why not do it this way, right? There were people that were saying, Motolani, you're intelligent, Motolani, you're beautiful, Motolani, you're visionary. I know all of that already, and I'm grateful for those comments. But when my husband came, as much as he appreciated all of those things, it was the first person that said that, Motolani, I don't think you're doing this right. And I'm like, oh, yeah, who is this? You've got guts, right?
Wow.
Because, I don't know, everybody seems to be feeling like Motolani is one almighty person. And then there's this person saying that, no, you're not doing it right. So I appreciated that about him. Again, one thing I appreciated about my husband is the fact that it was very real. Very real. So what I mean by that is, I remember where I was working then. This is a little funny. So he came into the facility. He was still asking me out. I had not told him yes. Then he said, I want to use the toilet.
Wow.
Now, he didn't say I want to use the toilet in English. He said it in our Yoruba. So in your mind, trying to translate it.
Wow.
And he was doing major, not minor. Translate it in Yoruba. And in my mind, coming from a lady coming from Lagos. And then you're asking me out. I've not even answered you. And you're, you know, saying it like that. I'm like, what is this? So ras. No, he's not even touching the thing. And then by the time he came out, he now said the thing is watery. I just feel
Oh my God.
because I'm like, come on, who does this? You're supposed to be well packaged, tools and all of that. And again, he said that
Like
in
a
Yoruba.
total package.
Yes, but then I had to ask myself, Motolani, do you really, sincerely in marriage, wouldn't we do these things? There are times that you've had issues where toilet issues caused issues between couples.
Exactly.
Because nobody's ready to do the bad work or the dirty work. It was so real, came straight. I'm not perfect, but I'm trying my best to be perfect. I had guys who would open door for me because we want to go to Ikeja City Mall and all that. But is that sustainable, right? So I saw a man who appreciated my pluses, was able to lead me, and a man who was very real. So there was really no much of shocks in the marriage because I had seen him as he was already. So for me,
Like how many years counting now?
7+.
Oh, beautiful. So
And we just won an award recently too.
wow, congratulations.
Thank
Congratulations. You. So when he asked you out, so how many months did it take for you to say, okay?
I'm not the kind of lady that would hang a guy for 3 months. If I'm not doing, I'm not doing.
Wow.
So most times when guys walked up to me and I feel that you're my spec, you know, I tell you, let's be friends. Because beyond being my spec, I want to check your character. Again, because I asked a lot of questions, I had asked married people, how is this thing? Oh? I had watched YouTube videos of people that I respect to learn about marriage. So I knew where the curves can be, and I'd read books also. So when they come to me, I want to check out. I'm not just saying, God, I want to hear you, and then I run, right? I've seen people who say God said, and then they got into the marriage, and now they were blaming God that you are the one. I didn't want to come into that space. As much as, yes, I wanted to be sure what God is saying, I also wanted to open my eyes. There's a place I like in Numbers 36, verse 6. It says, let the daughters of Zelophehad choose whoever they think best. So I know that to some extent, as much as God chooses for us, he also gives us a measure of choice, you know, to look at who we want, you know. So when they come closer, I check their character. Is this somebody I can stay with? So when they come closer, and then I see that something is not just right, I just tell them, sorry, it can't work. So I don't give them a yes for the relationship before now studying them. I studied them first before I now give a yes for the relationship.
So your study takes how many months?
My study 1, 2, 3 months, I'm good.
Oh.
And so that if you want to find another lady, you can quickly move on. There's no time to waste time.
Exactly.
So when my husband came on board, in fact, first seeing my husband, funny enough, I just liked him at first sight.
Wow.
Yes, I liked him at first sight, but I had to tell myself, Motolani, borrow yourself brain, right? You need to study this person. So when we came closer, I studied him. Then we spoke like we had known each other for more than 10 years, right? I would tell you our courtship and everything in about 11 to 12 months, we had done our introduction.
Wow.
Okay, so how would you, coming into the marriage now, how would you say the first, you know, few years, let me say 2-3 years, how was it for you?
Well, of course, there is no marriage without its own challenges. But the beautiful thing about marriage is when you have two people that are ready to make it work. So I didn't come into the marriage because I wanted to make it work alone. I also had a partner who was ready to make it work. And that's where we usually have this rift. When we in couples therapy, when we have couples therapy, or when we have people coming to therapy that had to do with marriage, it's usually that there is one person that really wants it to work and the other person is not working.
It's not balanced.
So it's not balanced. So one of the things, I won't take all the glory for my marriage working today. I mean, if I had married somebody who is not ready to make it work, I tell you, I most likely would be in couples therapy too, right? But I'm married to somebody who is as ready as myself to make the marriage work. So the challenges that we had on the way, we were able to weather it together. My husband is not a conventional African man, right? Who believes that the woman should be in the kitchen and the man should be on the road, you know? Okay. So if he's able to help with those things, he does. Right? So we believe in switching of roles. If I'm the one that can do something manly, fine. If he's the one that can do something feminine, and if at any point I come to my feminine role, fine. So it's more of a partnership than a role, you know, a role thing. So it makes it a lot more easy.
Okay, so how would you say you both, you know, celebrate anniversaries, birthdays? Take us through some.
Funny enough, myself and my husband, and maybe I am, but my husband is not somebody that is so
outgoing.
Well, he is outgoing, but when it comes to all this Lagos life,
paparazzi, okay.
I mean, paparazzi, that's the word. Yeah. Like, maybe I am more, so I have to bring that part in. So again, that takes us to understanding your spouse, right? I understand where it's coming from. He understands where I'm coming from. So what he doesn't have, I stand in for it, and then is able to adjust. So I see a lot of people have mismatched expectation in marriage. They want their husband to be somebody that takes them to the moon and then bring them to the star, and then if you are the one that can take the two of you to the star, lead it, right? And if work on it, dive with his strength and let him dive with you. I've had a wedding anniversary where my husband took somebody to go and pray. So I just had to. Wow. So imagine if I do not understand his personality. It would have taken. I had a particular client who walked up to me and then told me that her husband went to watch football on their wedding anniversary, and then it took a toll on the marriage. You know, while I agree that those dates are important, and I'm not saying we should now do whatever we want on those days, I believe my husband still came back, got me a gift very late that night when the date was already over. You know, but he compensated me. But I didn't now take it as, You know,
A
a
big
do
deal.
or die affair. I had a client who lost his spouse, and then he was telling me about a friend who was fighting with his wife. And he said, Madam, he calls me Madam in therapy. He said, Madam, don't you agree with me that they don't have sense? That was how he said it. He said, because you both have yourself, that's why you're fighting. I don't have a wife to fight with.
Wow.
You know, so if you're angry about certain things, it's because you have the person, that's why you're angry. You know, so I have a woman that usually say it could have been worse. It could have been worse. So that particular thing that makes you feel that you can't actually bend. Marriage is about compromise. It's not a place where you come and maintain your rights, you know, and say, this is how I want things to be. The man must be able to shift, and the woman must also be able to shift, and that's what makes it
Good.
marriage.
How will you describe your parenting style?
Well, my parenting style is a mix of both.
Gentle parenting, don't touch it.
That's why I say it's a mix of both, because I understand that each child has different personality. So I can't use a particular rigid style for all of them. I have a child who is very psychological, and what do I mean by that? You need to sit him down, explain to him why he has to do this, you know. So for me, I would rather use gentle parenting for that. Then I have a child who, until you are firm, are you with me? He might not respond. But my firm is not violent. Because I don't know, for some reason, I was never beaten by my parents. People say it's because I'm very good. That's why they never beat me. I don't know. But they never used cane on us. Maybe, I don't know about others, but for me, they never used cane on me, right? So I don't know how to use cane on a child. This is not to say that it is a standard not to use a cane, but I don't believe in it, right? So I use a mix of both psychology, firmness, gentle parenting, to make my parenting.
Okay, so how would you say you navigate family, work, and all this together now to say that, okay, it is time for me to have my free time? How and when can you say, okay, now I want to have my free time, I want to relax?
That's a
What do you
brilliant question. That's it, because I think early in my life, I usually feel guilty for resting. You know, but over the years, I've learned that rest is part of business strategy. Rest is part of passion strategy, and rest is part of purpose strategy. So one of the things I lash on is social support. Social support has been, I think I was in Unilag to speak to some students on mental health. I was invited, and then one of the lecturers was also asking me along that question. And one thing I said was social support. You know, you can't do it all. We have this cliche that we usually say that you are not El Shaddai, else you shall what? You shall die, right? So I have people who double work. I think about a month ago, we had a visit to the orphanage, right? And in the women group that I lead, and because I was also actively attending to clients, I couldn't do a research on the orphanage we wanted to visit. So I had to speak to some of our ladies. So the only thing I did for that was appear at the orphanage. Do you understand? Because some people were already, you know, doing that underground assignment. Also at the home front, I have the children help, my husband helps, you know. So there is that social support is there. At the church front also, there is also those. So I would say that one of the things that has helped me, you know, to hold everything together is social support. I don't joke with rest, because there had been a time in my life when I broke down totally. And then I realized that in my period of breaking down, life moved on as if I never mattered. So I discovered that life is short, right? The worst thing in life is sometimes when people, when people die, people just mourn you for a few days.
And that's it.
And then life moves on as if you were never there in the first place. So I know that if I really want to impact more lives, I should take care of myself. My body is important. My rest is important. I don't joke with it.
Okay, so we need to wrap up now. So what is that one message you'd like to pass across to parents, you know, to teenagers, most especially? What is that one message you'd like to pass across to them?
Okay, so I think when we all know that our life here is a temporary assignment, I think we will live with more intentionality and more accuracy. If you're a parent, you're not going to be here for life to be your children's parent. So as much as the amount of time you will be here, impact a right legacy. Children don't do what you say. They do what they see. They do what you do. So live with intentionality. Then also for teenagers, knowing that you will be teenager for life, right? And sometimes I look at myself and I'm like, when was I just 14?
Exactly.
Right? So you won't Bible says, remember the Lord your God in the days of your youth. There is a time we call days of youth, because there is a time when it will no longer be days of youth. So when you walk with that understanding, you want to put a footprint in the sand of time. You want to touch everybody you meet. Now, I was talking to one of my clients, and I was telling my client that I won't be on hurt for life. You know, and after some time, I will move on and people won't remember. And she said, no, you're not somebody that people will forget. I can assure you. And I'm like, okay, really? Let me hear that. And then she said, you know the number of lives you have impacted, including mine? She said, you are going to be someone like Mother Teresa that will continue to remember long after. But why can't she make such statements? Why? Because I'm living intentionally. Every day is an opportunity to touch others. And it goes to our government, it goes to all of us in leadership positions, you know, to remember that life is a temporary assignment and every day is an opportunity to touch life in a better way.
Wow, thank you so
Beautiful.
much,
Thank you
Mrs.
so
Mutolani
very much for
Akintayo.
coming.
We really say thank you for coming to the set today. You know, our personality of the week. What a way to start the month of June. All right, thank you so much. Once again, we say thank you. And the Mid Morning Show continues right after this break. Don't go anywhere. Stay with us.